Welcome. Thanks. Welcome to the regular meeting of the Board of Library Trustees meeting of October 8th, 2024. The time is 6:01 p.m. and I'll invite Ginger to call the roll.
All right, Trustee Ando,
Here.
Trustee Cortez,
Here.
Trustee Kyle, Trustee Lee,
Here.
Chair Badat.
Here. All right, I'll invite Ginger to explain how the public can participate in this evening's agenda.
Thank you, Chair Badat. This meeting will be held in person and it's being recorded and streamed live to Zoom at the link on the agenda. You may participate in person to provide public comment. Each speaker will have 3 minutes. You may also submit your comments by email by 4 p.m. on the day of the meeting. We are offering closed captioning for this evening's meeting on Zoom. Select the live transcript button on Zoom to enable this feature.
Thank you, Ginger. So we'll move to item number 1, approving the regular meeting minutes from August 13th, 2024. Any comments or questions about it?
I reviewed the minutes and I'd like to move to accept them. A second.
All right, Ginger, would you call a roll call vote, please?
Trustee Ando,
Aye.
Trustee Cortez,
Aye.
Trustee Kyle, Trustee Lee,
Aye.
Chair Badat.
I'll abstain. Good. Thank you, and see that we don't have anyone here in person, and I don't think we had anyone submit comments for the meeting. So we'll skip the public expression.
Yes.
And move on to item number 2, staff or special presentations. We have a staff presentation on Path of the Book, so turn it over.
Okay, so I will share my screen. Okay, so today we're going to present on the path of a 4th Street pop-up book, how that got there, and the other story of the stored and unavailable books.
Okay, so I'm going to begin with the path of the pop-up book and the other story. My name, by the way, is Jennifer Kiefer. I work in technical services, which is kind of a strange way of just saying cataloging. So we are going to start with the other story. When we were contemplating how we were going to address the move, what we were going to do with all the books and all the records for the books, we basically had 3 categories of books. We had those that were checked out, which we couldn't do anything with. We had the items that would eventually go to storage and the items that would eventually make it to the pop-up. So as you can see there, we had 93,000 items in our collection. At that time, there were about 9,000 books checked out. So there were 56,000 books that we had to figure out, how can we make these, put these into storage and communicate that to the patrons, to the public in a way that is understandable and is acceptable. So before we do that, I want to start with, this is called an item record. And some of you may know this screen if you've ever checked out books at the library. This is the screen the staff usually uses. It looks like this. This is a screen just of a specific book like this one. So this is the item record, shows the history of the book and the location, sort of the mapping of the book. So from the very moment that the book is created, there's a created date, that's when the book hits the shelf. So if you go around the circle in the upper corner, it says location. That is sort of where the neighborhood where the book lives. Then we have the status, which is typically you're used to seeing checked out, checked shelf, on hold. We go around the call number, which is more like the street address where exactly you're going to find that book on the shelf. Then as we move up to where that red box is, that's called the I code 2. And that's where we have special notes. And what usually is in that is paperback. So if a patron comes and they say, I'm going on a trip, I want the paperback copy, that's how the staff can see it as a paperback. So I want to start with, when we were working with Marinette, we had to figure out which of these fields can we use to communicate that the books are unavailable to the public. So we started with the location. And we currently at Santa Fe, the locations, we have 100 location codes just for downtown. So I'm going to use this book as an example of a location, so you understand. A picture book, the location is SRJE. So I'm going to turn this over and show you what that means. So you can see SR is anything that lives at downtown Santa Fe. If it's at Northgate, it is not SR, it is SN. So this is specifically downtown Santa Fe. Then you see here the J. J is for juvenile, which is children's. And E stands for easy, which is the library way of saying picture book. So SRJE means picture book. So when we looked at that location code, in order to create location codes for the new pop-up location, we would have had to copy over 100 location codes, which would have been enormous amount of work for both us and Marinette. So we decided that was not our best option. So then we looked at status, and status has a Y, which is unavailable. We thought that's quick and easy, and that's simple. So I'll give you a scenario of why Y is not adequate. So let's pretend there are two friends sitting at a coffee shop and they're talking about books, and someone says, I want to place a hold on this book. And they're sitting in Mill Valley at a coffee shop. And the friend says, that sounds really great. I'll read it with you. Let's see if we can get that book. So they open up their laptop and they search the catalog. And it shows in the catalog, 3 are available. So they go to availability by location, they click on that, and it shows Mill Valley, check shelf, and they scroll down to 2 unavailable copies. One is Belvedere Tiburon, checked out, and the third one is Santa Fe, unavailable. And so the first question is, what does that mean? Unavailable. So they call Mill Valley and they say, we really want this book. Can you set it aside for us? And by the way, there's this other book that says unavailable. What does that mean? Well, staff people know unavailable means that it's basically off limits. You can't place a hold on it. It's basically in this kind of frozen status. But for a patron, what does that mean? So they're going to question it. And the Mill Valley person is probably going to say, you know, you really should call Santa Fe. Maybe they can make some kind of special way for you to get that book. They can accommodate you. So now that patron is going to call Santa Fe. And now we're going to have to re-explain what unavailable means. And at the end of the conversation, the answer is, no, you can't have the book, which is a really horrible patron experience. So we realized this isn't going to work. We have to do better than that. So then we went around the circle. What are the other fields that we can manipulate? And we came upon the I code 2, suppress. And what suppress does is it makes it invisible. So now when the patrons at the coffee shop look up that title, it's going to show Mill Valley, check shelf, Beltib, checked out, Santa Fe is nowhere to be seen. So this is much more patron friendly, and it saves a ton of staff time because it's not just us being impacted, it's actually the whole consortium because we all share the catalog. So what we decided to do is we closed the Labor Day holiday. Marinette has the ability to do what they call a global update, where they can change the status of all those fields. So when we go back to this location code, what they did was anything that started with SR, the coding changed to N to make it invisible and Y to make it unavailable. So that became our new default status. Every time those 9,000 books that were checked out, as they come back to us, we put it back to status NY and make it basically unavailable, invisible to the public until the staff has a chance to review those books and decide whether or not they want to keep that book at the pop-up location. So now Perla is going to explain how some of the NY books transform to become A.
So the story of the A books, the books that are on the pop-up library shelves. So like Jennifer said, librarians do review each book that comes in. And so before we moved, they made their selections at the Carnegie Library here. And so we had big bulk of books that were selected to code in the item record as books that we were going to be taking with us to 4th Street. So they made their selections based on a variety of criteria, popularity, and the difficult part for them was actual linear feet. So they had to measure linear feet of shelving, and this was based on what we had available in shelving at the pop-up location. And they were measuring books and about how, wide and how many in a linear foot. And so made selections based on that. And, having to keep in mind that we would later order books and get the returns of the books that were checked out at the time. And so once they made their selections while we were here at the Carnegie, circulation staff went ahead and bulk updated these books that were selected and made them available. Well, at the time, actually, we coded them to take to the 4th Street location, but we had them as unavailable because we're kind of in transition there. So we opened the 4th Street pop-up location with 9,000 or more items available to the patrons. That's what we worked on while we were still here at the Carnegie. So that was about 10% of the collection. And so that number continues to grow as the returns and new books come in. And we are continuously reviewing books, the librarians, and scanning them to code them for availability there at the pop-up and coding them as NY if they are books that are selected to go into storage. So staff was actually scanning each book into either a file that just had like barcodes, and then we went ahead and used an option in the system where we could upload that list and have it updated to the correct coding instantaneously. And at other times, just scanning book by book and changing the statuses. Let's see. So back to the item record. So in these fields here that Jennifer spoke about are where the changes to the statuses of the books are located. And yeah, they are luckily able to be updated, like I said, in bulk, and it's still lots of work and continually having to come in every single day. So every time, we get our returns, our deliveries, we are having librarians look at that and bring them back to us and letting us know if they're for storage or if they're to keep at the 4th Street pop-up. So MarinNet did create a new code for us, this iCode 2A that goes into the iCode 2 field. And they helped us select a new code that we could use, and that was the A code. So in addition to this coding in the system, the staff actually physically color coded each book, and we continue to do so. Like in Jennifer's example here, so we have these little colored dots here that once a book was processed, so we'll have, say a big cart of books that are to be kept up at the shelves there. And we go ahead and we put a sticker on each one, color coded by children's, teen, adult. And that saves us lots of time, because when the books get checked out and then come back around, we know that this has been processed and we don't have to go through that same process of looking in the system to see if it's a book that's going to stay there or going to be stored. So thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, any questions or comments from trustees?
Just want to say thank you. You guys are, you two, not guys, you two are great storytellers in your in your data. So just out of curiosity, so maybe I misunderstood, but you had to recode all the 90% too? You just did did you just mass code like
That was
all
what
the
Marinda
did it?
could do
Oh,
a
okay.
global update to do that
Oh.
NY.
Oh, nice. Okay.
Then we had to scan the books to do, they created that coding for us, the
Yeah.
A and the I code 2 field, which usually was like paperback or these other
Mhm.
specialty things. And that designates San Rafael temp space. And what that helps us do is reverse the process later.
Oh,
That coding, we can undo that coding when we go back to downtown. So we'll know exactly which books we had and how to code them back. And the other thing is if it did have something in that coding, like a paperback beforehand, MarinNet ran lists, so we can also reverse back the paperback coding into those books.
all the work behind the scenes. Thank you.
Great.
Are you finding any issues that you hadn't thought about as you've now started to implement this and have been running the pop-up?
Yes.
I know, everyone, but
That's it.
that was the question, right?
So, I select DVDs that are PG or R.
Mhm.
It's PG-13. So one of the things is we had that linear feet, right? So I measured out 15 feet. I could fit about 40 DVDs in 15 feet. I went with 120 DVDs because I had to assume that eventually I'd be buying more. We had the returns coming back. Day one that we opened, within 1 hour, I had 3 patrons check out 20 DVDs. I kid you not. And it was like,
Oh, my God.
my shelves were gone. So then as the returns came in, I had to start coding things that were unavailable as the I code 2 to show that they were now going to be at the tent space. And that's happening to every selector. We're already finding that we have to add or we have to weed.
Yeah.
That's the other thing, is that as things come back, it's very difficult to predict what's going to be checked out.
Mhm.
So we're really heavy on picture books and graded books. Graded books are the ones, it's a picture book, but let's say it's about dinosaurs. So we put this green glade and that's a dinosaur book, or a purple one is a sparkly book. So we found that the glades are not circling as well as they did at the Carnegie for whatever reason, but other things are circling more. And we have different patrons, which is also a positive.
I drove by on the way here. There was, looked bustling still.
Yeah.
It is, yeah, it is, certainly, and we're getting great feedback, just, it seems like nothing but good feedback about the space.
Great.
Yeah.
Everyone loves this.
Yeah.
Very floors, that's the
I see.
Homes and libraries.
Yeah.
Although it makes it louder though.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Ah.
Echoing,
Yeah.
football music.
Okay,
Thank you.
thank you.
Also wondering, like, is it like the stored books it's just, there's no chance you guys could go and pull out some stuff if you want to, because it's.
That's-
not-
We're not gonna. No, not really. Yeah, right. I mean, someone.
Well, there's some that are stored on site at E Street. And depending on whether the contractor, what their policies are with their insurance, we could probably go in and read or take some.
Yeah.
The rest are all stored off-site.
A lot of work, guys do. Packing.
Oh, it was a lot of work. I thought half of their presentation was just gonna be how hard work.
Physical labor.
Yeah.
It was difficult to condense it for sure.
I think I saw you guys like working even before the Labor Day weekend. I saw.
Yes.
And yet every time I see 2 weeks before like unboxing.
Right,
already.
right.
A lot of work.
I think Daniel's gonna talk about that.
Mine's gonna be statistics. It's not gonna be yes.
Oh,
This is a very statistic heavy
Yeah,
presentation.
I'm gonna go through pretty much.
The available, the Xanadu circulation, I mean, there's a lot of books in other libraries easily transferred, which
Right.
I do quite often.
right.
I don't wait for Xanadu to get a copy or something. like
Right.
that. Is there a way to continue promote the zip books for people to, you know? I mean,
Yes, we're
there's a
still
copy,
doing,
yeah.
yeah, we're still doing zip books. And those are popular,
But it,
you know, usually the books that are the most popular at the time have hold lists, right? So. So people are on hold and they're going through those lists, and a lot of, like, say there was an author like Patterson that. We figured there were so many other copies at other libraries that it wasn't necessary to bring things like that.
yes. Good job.
Did Pickleweed or Northgate increase like the amount of books they could take, or was it really just like whatever it was 93,000 total from downtown? You took 9,000 for the pop-up, so 84,000 went into storage. Is that basically how the math worked out?
Well, less than 84, there's I think probably.
Or minus the one
Minus.
that's been checked out,
Right,
but
right.
the rest, none of it went to it all went to storage.
Yeah.
Northgate holds pretty much all of our high demand items, the new items. And spaces that are premium at all 3 locations.
Thank you guys very much.
You guys want to take off this? It's probably also.
Okay,
Have a good
well,
evening.
Thank you, Bo. Thank you all.
We'll move on to number 3, the fiscal year 2023-2024 statistics.
So you probably been presented to about statistics maybe once a year. Is that kind of the case? So every time around this year, we have to submit statistics to the California State Library as part of their public library survey. They gather all the data from public libraries throughout California, and they use it really to evaluate trends, use it for policies, and really use it for outreach and for their grants on how to help us promote our services. And this year's no exception. We're collecting data still at the end of this month. And it's kind of interesting just to see how, coming from Orange County to Santa Fe, how everyone collects the same data and uses it. So we'll go over today a few data sets, residents and cardholders, our open hours, library visits, physical collections and circulation, ebooks and audiobooks, and library programming. So when talking about the residents and our cardholder data, the city's population pretty much remained stable. That it dipped a little bit fiscal year 24. One of the things that is noticeable here is the level of our cardholder numbers have dropped, and that's because we, Marina as a consortium, resumed deleting inactive accounts. During the pandemic, we extended or renewed cards, pretty much at numbers higher than ever. Just to make sure that people retained access to our ebooks and our online services. And now we're back to coordinating deletion of cards that are inactive.
If I can ask a question while you're making a presentation, when you say inactive, what does, how long does somebody have to be inactive before you?
So our cards expire every 5 years.
Mhm.
So as long as there's circ activity on it, so you can use it. If we can tell when it's used,
Mhm.
we won't delete it if it has circ activity for 2 years.
2 years, okay,
So these cards were not active for 2 years.
got it.
A large portion of this was also due to the library card project, so issued all those students in the district library cards, and a lot of those went unused.
Hmm,
So what we do is we delete, since we're reissuing those cards, we delete the inactive ones so that we don't have any duplicate records.
got it.
So a lot of these deletions are also part of the library card
Oh, I
project.
see, okay. Thank you.
Open hours, so our open hours took a little bit of a hit in the later part of this fiscal year. Just to alleviate the kind of unexpected staff turnover. Which started earlier this year. But we still remain pretty close to the 6150, which is probably the highest. Since I was able to collect data from just before the pandemic. So pretty modest.
And obviously this is July through June, right?
July 23 to June 24.
Okay.
And Daniel, on that point, so if it's not a matter of budget, but rather just this staff turnover,
Right,
we're not able to fill all the positions in
right. It was just a
Timely
matter of,
manner.
it was just a
a,
matter
so
of,
otherwise you probably would have had somewhere near this.
we would have maintained the same level.
Got it, thank you.
Library visits. So despite a reduction in open hours, our library visits increased by almost 3%. So we saw more visitors this fiscal year. And this is combined at all 3 of our locations.
Is it books like stopping to just pick up on hold or return items, just come in?
Well, it's visiting the library in general. So
Yeah.
our gate counters
Yeah.
are at the front doors.
Yeah.
At downtown, they're the front and so in the rear door.
Okay.
On the second floor, so
Yeah.
they read both.
Oh, okay, there you go. Okay, got it.
But this is all 3.
Combined, all 3 locations. And I think it's actually pretty close. This is the closest I've seen from library data. Other libraries around the county and some of the libraries I'm familiar with. That's closest to pre-pandemic levels. Physical collection and circulation. So this is where my busy slides start. I apologize in advance. So collection size reduced about 12%, 2%, sorry. During fiscal year 24. And there's impacts to that are pretty much data-driven deselection. So we did a lot of weeding to get rid of outdated material that's in poor shape. And things that just didn't circulate. So we have kind of rule of thumb is probably no circulation for 2 years. Items that don't circulate for 2 years, and we start to look at them. That's standard practice throughout libraries, but it intensified for us knowing that we were going to have to close downtown and really curate our collections to bring over to the temp space. So that motivated us to do more deselection. Staffing and open hours, the impact there is that the reduction in staff or the reduce in staffing levels really limits how much engagement you can do with promoting or readers advisory, class visits, and how we're pushing our titles out. And then the other thing is that there was a 13% increase in the use of ebooks and e-audiobooks in 24, fiscal year 24, which we can see here, it just continues circulation Marina-wide in that blue just continues to increase. And one of the things that's always interesting to me is the Marina count, so the Marina count reduced. If you can, as you can see, last fiscal year, we had about 306,000 titles in our digital formats. And then this year, there's about 80, there's a little over 80. And that's because Enki, which was a California State Library sponsored platform for ebooks, stopped offering those ebooks, and they held about 168,000 copies in our system. But despite that, our selectors are doing a great job of picking titles because our circulation and our use increased with that smaller collection of ebooks.
What's the, what about the delta there? Is that still like, what, like 50, 60,000
Yeah,
that were organically dropped?
right. And
306 to 80?
yeah, so there's reduction on Overdrive is the main producer of our, but that's the main platform we use. So it drops, it purchasing on their, I don't know that it dropped, but in terms of titles, it was just lower in terms of, or titles versus copies of those same titles. And the other thing is that we have platforms like Hoopla and the Palace Project, where their collection numbers, since they're readily available sites, it's hard to pin down a specific number of the titles that are available for those platforms. Hoopla has ebooks, audiobooks, magazines, graphic novels as well. But because they're readily available and they're rotating, they're changing, it's hard to really pin down. But I think they advertise having over 500,000 titles available in their platforms. So this number, it's very impactful, but most of it is because of the Enki who stopped providing those books. But it was absorbed by the Palace Project, which is also another platform that we host, that we use for ebooks. And it's accessible for our cardholders as well. Programming and attendance. So this fiscal year, we provided or offered 361 programs. That was an increase of 31% from last fiscal year. But we saw a 2% decrease in program attendance, which was attributed to a huge author visit that we hosted at one of the high schools and invited surrounding students. So last year it was a huge event. And it didn't happen this last fiscal year, but we are in talks to have another similar event for this year, another local. But that singular event kind of skewed the stats there. And one of the things we started collecting last year is, if you can tell from fiscal year 23-24, it's programs that for all ages, so family-oriented programs. We're taking stats on those. And in conclusion, I mean, it's evident that some of the impacts in terms of staffing shortage and reduced hours really left an imprint in our statistics and our ability to really engage on a deeper level in our programming and our readers advisory and our service to really promote our books. But doing that and still increasing programming and being present enough to increase our library visits, I think for me, it shows huge resiliency on our staff. And I think that's, it's just something that reading the stats and talking with staff about these just kind of stuck with me. Being so new to the system, it was great to kind of see that in some of those, like, we want people to engage with us on site, but also programming off site. And those are two key factors where we excelled at.
Great, thank you, appreciate it. Turn it over to the trustees for questions or comments.
Daniel, thank you. Going back to residents and cardholders a minute. Is there a benchmark percentage of the population that libraries look to achieve in terms of cardholders? I see we're running with the latest edits somewhere north of 50%. Seems like a good number, but I don't have a benchmark against that.
It's very similar, and I'm most familiar with the statistics for Novato, which the city has a similar population base. Card holdership was a little bit higher there, but it's still, it's marginal in terms of difference, from there to here. So in terms of benchmark, I think it depends, and we go by, I think one of the impacts too is that in San Rafael, you have a county library that we share a patron base with, and depending on where you live, you're either part of that jurisdiction or you're part of the city's jurisdiction, which is not the case for other surrounding cities.
Got it. All right, so being a little north of 50% seems to be a reasonable benchmark or a
Right.
reasonable number for us.
That's right,
going forward.
and then it'll increase, we'll see an increase once we start to launch our library card delivery to the
students?
students,
Yeah.
which we're planning to do the first phase by October of this year.
Okay,
So this one,
I'm sorry. By December. We were supposed to do it in October, but there was a little delay in the opt-out process for students who don't want their data shared. So December.
all right.
I guess you can sort of correlate too, like even despite the drop in cards, I mean, it still seems like, you know, obviously circulation is up. Visits are up, so we're still.
And it was the drop was not, it's not just exclusive to San Rafael. There was a drop throughout the consortium for
Right.
the same reason. And most noticeable is also in some of the Marin County libraries because they do similar things with the library card project. So we issue a batch of cards, delete them if they're not used, only to like issue them to the students again.
I remember, when my kids were in elementary school, that one day he just show up home with a, weekend pocket, Friday pocket with a new library card. And I'm like, what's this? So, I'm just concerned about the plastic being not, that card was needed at the time, because it was, I'm talking about 2015 or
Right.
14.
So our strategy is a little different.
Yeah.
So
Changed.
TK through 5th grade actually get a physical card.
Yeah.
The engagement's different with them. Anyone from 6th grade and up, they just get a digital card. And then our engagement with them changes. So it's more how to access our online databases, how to do homework help, where they can immediately use that card. And one of the things that we're going to start to implement this year is that their student ID number is going to serve as their barcode number.
Oh, okay.
So they can, that number that they probably should know. For other things, they'll be able to use it as their library card number to log in online or to use it to self-check.
I think they seem to all carry their student ID in their backpacks.
Yeah.
Like high school.
I was at Novato when we first started doing the library card project, and my team had to do 7,500 cards manually. And launch them out to each class. Now it's an automatic upload of information, but it makes you appreciate how much work it is. One funny anecdote is we had a teacher who didn't really understand what was going on, thought the envelope of cards for their students was swag, dumped it on the table, and then we had a class full of students. Luckily, the organization we did a good job of organizing, so we knew what teacher it was, what period, what students, so like we collected all of them back, sorted it out. But that was definitely a learning experience. But engagement with teachers is at a much higher level. This year we're planning presence. It's a collaboration for the San Rafael schools between Marin County, San Rafael Library, and the San Rafael City Schools to really do like a higher level of engagement with students, assemblies, to really highlight all the uses.
What about Miller Creek?
Miller Creek, we're going to reach out to them separately as part of a different project. So, yeah.
I just had a question, Danielle, as you are looking at this and knowing, you're coming from the county, the Novato base. But are there any like different best practices or lessons learned from your previous positions that you think you could integrate here?
In terms of
anything that you
So
see
data
that you're like,
collection. Data collection is one of the things I started to implement. And it's collecting data that isn't really required by the state, but it really informs our day-to-day decisions. For example, like something very basic, it's like how many delivery bins we get each day, how many holes we're plugging out of those delivery bins, how many paging items we do, how many items we clear from our whole shelf. And that's really gonna help staff make informed decisions on staffing, on what time we hold programs, what time our visitors, align it with our visitors, what time they come in. And my goal is to alleviate a little bit of the stress from people who are scheduling staff in so that they know like Monday mornings or Wednesday mornings, we have high delivery, but it's high holds processing. So that's just kind of one example of one of the things where we collect a lot of data to make those informed decisions. And then I kind of want to roll that out more to like our collections, like if we get 100 new books a month, how many of those 100 books are immediately leaving our library to go to on hold for someone else? Like what's a remedy we can implement? Like some of the libraries already done it, like a Lucky Day collection where all the high demand items, we have a batch of them that are stay on site. So that you have to come in and grab it, and it's kind of, it provides a little bit of equity for people who can't just place holds, they can come into the library. So it's kind of looking at those kind of trends.
Cool, thank
Great.
you.
One thing I'd like to comment, and I know staffing is probably a huge issue, especially with the downtown closure and pop-up, and then moving into the pickleweed renovations. It's probably gonna be an ongoing issue probably for the next year plus. And I know just a few months ago, before you started, we made a comment about library programming, so I'm excited to see that it's up. And I'd like, obviously, if you look at pre-pandemic levels, we had, nearly 1,000 programs in that fiscal year, and now, we're still probably what, 350-ish,
Yeah.
I'd say. So I think, to the extent possible, it'd be great to see programming go up, and it's nice to see that it is,
Right.
incrementally going up.
So one of my goals, and I share this with Catherine as well, is that we want to make sure we identify what our core structure of programming is. So that it's understanding that our human resource or our ability to provide them in person or in terms of volume of staffing is limited, just knowing a more targeted approach, what we want MFL Public Libraries program mission to be. To identify those 4 programs and then build on those.
Yeah.
Just be a little bit more strategic about because we don't have, like, we all know that everyone's busy. We want to reach all parts of the city. So we just gotta be a little bit more strategic in our program offering and how we bring those in.
Yeah, that's great to hear. And like I said, I know obviously just started a couple months ago and we're gonna have staffing issues for foreseeable future. So,
Yeah,
but it is good to see that it's incremental.
and one of the things that's also kind of picking up because of the base of the library card project is the collaboration with other libraries who want to do programming and want to reach the same kind of base of students. And that's just kind of like nurturing a bunch of ideas in terms of where we can collaborate. And it's easier to do it with other libraries to share resources. So I see our programming to take a different kind of approach, right?
I'll follow up on that. Regarding the library programming and the program attendance, I see the programs were up last year, which is great. Attendance was about flat, maybe a little down. Without going into detail about any particular program and understanding that there are equity issues regarding some programs that that require that we accept a lower kind of number of people coming into those programs. Can you talk at a high level about how you guys determine which programs to continue or to try new programs and how you reduce or minimize other programs?
So programming has been a struggle post-pandemic across, I mean, for me, the strength is knowing around Marin County. But it's been a struggle to regain those programming numbers in terms of attendance. And I think everyone has been making an effort to see whether hybrid programming works, whether online only programming works. And I think in those kind of test cases, there's still a large, segment of our population that's the best access is in person.
Sure.
Technology is an issue, and I think one of the things that, for example, our art talks,
Mhm.
Wednesday art talks are now in person. And we're hoping that that picks up and generates more, a larger audience. Story times as well. For example, at downtown, we've tried 3 different locations and within the proximity of downtown to really get some traction with our story time. We just, got permission to use the lawn outside of Bank of America across the street.
Oh.
So we think that's going to be a much pleasant, area for story time. So we're like every
Trying.
program where we're trying
Yeah.
to really gain traction in that. One thing that's just, and it's just a national trend, it's hard to get teams to come into the building and to generate programs, that really, my personal opinion, I think teens are just really busy.
Yes.
Sports and educational requirements and responsibilities, that it's hard for us to float to the top of those lists.
Mhm.
So we've got to be a little bit more strategic in how we offer the things we offer.
You still have the teen ambassadors, we used to have it years ago.
There used to be a teen ambassadors. I'm not familiar when, I'm not familiar with when it stopped at San Rafael.
Mhm.
But I know because there's no designated teen librarian right now, it's hard for other librarians to really step in and take that on right now.
We're struggling with it.
Yeah,
Things in-
so part of
Yeah.
the mission, once we become fully staffed, is to really re-engage those connections and reestablish those partnerships with community organizations that were helping us get people in.
Thank you, appreciate it.
Of course.
I think you're on the right track.
Yeah.
I think we are. I think we are. I think it's, there's definitely a huge willingness to just get us going, and we're excited about being in the temp space of the new kind of population that's coming in that are new to kind of libraries in a sense.
Mhm.
But I think they're new to kind of the type of library we're in right now, because it seems so much like a bookstore and a coffee shop, but it's organized like a library, so it's intriguing in that in itself. But I think the excitement of staff and just knowing that we're gonna come back to a new space is kind of motivation in itself.
Yeah.
Which is really good to see.
I missed the tour, but I did take the time to go one
Yeah.
morning and just sit in there and kind of watch things, and I really do think it's a nice,
Yeah, it is.
space, and you guys have done. a
Other
nice job.
directors from other libraries email us and tell us that their patrons are telling them about.
That's great.
The library right on Fourth Street, people
Yeah.
walking, like right in front.
Yeah, so we're tapping into a lot of the events that are happening too. For example, I'm putting up a Day of the Dead altar on the window to participate with the October 19th procession. We're participating in the Halloween
Right.
walk.
Yeah.
So we're really engaging with the downtown kind of structure of business.
It's really not that far to the East Street Library, so hopefully.
No, and it's surprising to us how many people we get in there, they're like, new to libraries.
Yeah.
No.
That's exciting. It's
Yeah.
good to see that also like the staff to kind of
Yeah,
galvanize.
absolutely.
Because I'm sure it was hard being in that building and dealing with leaks
Yeah.
and putting out. trash
Absolutely,
buckets
and they're completely understating how hard they worked.
Yeah.
To get everything over. I mean, we're working on 2 timelines with our moving companies, 2 different moving companies. To really, one thing was getting the books, curating the collection, selecting them and getting them here. The other side that we'll call it, like, it won't be noticed or talked about enough, is how we're prepping to get the collection that's in storage to its appropriate space in a completely new layout. So we're working with those 2 timelines at the same time.
Well, you really hit the ground running.
It's funny because it wasn't until I started doing this that I really had like the time to really learn about like what's going on with like our service, and because it was mostly talking to contractors and planning the move and talking to movers. But yeah, it's great.
Well, let's, let's move on to item number 4, staff liaison report. Anything, brief program
Yeah,
updates,
really-
reports, on meetings, conferences.
Yeah, so it's, yeah, of course, I talked a little bit about the library card project. We're meeting with San Rafael City Schools, Marin County Free Library and us to really plan out and develop, good engagement with our students. We participated in a lunch and learn, or I participated in a lunch and learn with United Against Hate Week. With other city departments, and we also held a poster making contest at the library. That was our first program since opening. We got 8 people come in and create posters. And right now we're involved in a significant amount of earthquake and emergency services planning for our locations. As like mass care units and distribution centers. So we're doing a lot of training for staff on those things.
We move on to.
Real
oh,
quick,
sorry.
so we used to get updates on sort of your, I assume you now, like, your meeting on like the Measure D committee and like the Library Foundation. Is that something that you're taking over, Catherine's taking
I
over?
can do those, but we're not meeting with the Library Foundation until the initiative,
On the election.
the election.
Okay,
So I haven't met with them since I was on board. So
okay. What about the Measure D?
I haven't met with anything with Measure D. So I'll report back on the Marina Board of Directors meeting when I attend the Library Friends.
Okay, great, thanks.
Then, last, commission reports, any brief reports on meetings, et cetera, by trustees? Okay. During the
All
meeting,
right.
time is 6:52. Thanks. Thank you, Ginger. Appreciate
Thanks,
it.
Ginger.
Stay cool.
Oh my gosh, yeah.